We are here at this beautiful beach in Malta. I wanted to make a video about the HES code in Turkey. So we came to Malta a couple weeks ago after we left Turkey, and we were in Turkey for 90 days. So I wanted to share with you our experience of whether or not you need an HES code. And the answer to that is yes and no. So if you look at websites like Turkish Airlines, they'll say no, as well as the American Embassy in Turkey will also tell you that one is not required. But we wanted to go over a list of experiences where we did or did not need one.
So when we booked our tickets online through Turkish Airlines to actually in our initial arrival, we did not need one at all.
So when we were in Istanbul, we opted to take a ferry from Istanbul to Bandırma. And when we booked our tickets, I believe we did that online as well.
We did, yeah, through the IDO or IDO.
Yeah, IDO ferry website. We did not need an HES code in that circumstance.
And when we got to Bandırma, we booked a hotel room. We didn't need one then either. They just took our passports.
When we got to Çanakkale, we wanted to book a bus on the Pamukkale bus line to Burhaniye. And in this circumstance, we were prompted on the website to enter an HES code. So what we did at this point is we opted to go to the ticket office so that we could speak to them directly and let them know that we were tourists and we did not, or were at least were not required to have an HES code.
So as we were walking to the ticket office, we stopped at the mall in Çanakkale. And we did that just so we could use the restroom because it was kind of a long walk. And they would not let us in without the HES code. So we handed them our passports. We tried to insist to them that we didn't need one. They said, absolutely, you need one. They weren't letting us in without it. So they took our passports and were kind of fiddling with them, and they had their phones, and it was weird, kind of like, what's going on?
Right.
But what they were doing was they were signing us up for the HES codes themselves, which was pretty nice of them and really convenient
so after a few minutes, they basically handed us a Post-it note with the HES code written on it and said, go ahead and let us into the mall. And so we actually put that Post-it note inside of our passport. And so we were on our way to the Pamukkale bus ticket office, as I stated. And when we did arrive at the bus ticket office, we explained to him we were tourists. And again, this was a situation where it doesn't matter what the rules were. They insisted that we needed one. And so coincidentally, we had just received one at the mall, so that really worked out for us because at this point we just presented him with the HES code that these ladies at the mall had written on this Post-it note for us, and we were then able to get our tickets to move on in our journey.
Yeah, and so coincidentally, all of the malls, it seems throughout Turkey, you'll need an HES code. We stopped at one also in Burhaniye and one in Antalya, as well as the Çanakkale Mall, and all of them needed the HES code to enter.
So we're not big shoppers. The reason we stopped at these malls so often was actually just to use the restroom as we walked around, so that's a side note. Keep in mind, malls are good for restrooms. So once we received our tickets for our Pamukkale bus, one thing we noticed when we were on the bus is that the police, and this is in general, are stopping cars, but they did stop the bus and they came on board and they checked all of the nationals, residents for HES codes. But when they approached us, we just showed them our passports, our American passports, and they didn't even stop and talk to us. They just kept walking. So we also rented a car, and for a couple months in our journey in Turkey, we had a rental car. So a similar circumstance with being stopped on the bus, we would also be stopped by the police multiple times. Sometimes the police would just see our complexion and assume that we were tourists and send us on our way without even stopping us. But when they would motion us to pull over, we would just show them our passports and they would again just send us on our way. So in circumstances where we were stopped on buses and or in our rental car, or even I'd say in a taxi, if you're on a long taxi ride between towns, we were not required to show our HES code.
We did not have to show one at any of the airports. For example, we went to the airport in Burhaniye to get a rental car, and they did ask for one. We didn't have them. We showed them our passports, though, and they were fine with that and let us in, no problem.
And having said that we had our rental car, we did stop at multiple historical sites throughout the entirety of our journey, and not once were we required to show an HES to enter into any of these sites. So that was nice.
So at the Istanbul airport, you didn't need one. At the Antalya airport, you didn't need one. At the Burhaniye airport, you did not need one. It really seems the only time you needed them was for a longer bus ride, not like the inner city buses, but for a longer extended bus ride and to enter the malls.
Right, and that might only be that particular bus line that was requiring them. For whatever reason, their system was not set up currently to sell tickets without the HES code. So I did want to jump in here and tell you guys that I did check out this one website, and it basically goes over how to get an HES code, and I wanted to share that with you since ours was basically created for us by these ladies at the mall. That may be a circumstance where you go to a mall and they'll just generate one for you, but if you want to have one prior to, I'm going to show you now a website that I found and go over how they explain how to go about getting it, and I will also include the link to that website so you can look over it if you're wanting to. So here's the site I was talking about. But basically, as you can see, who needs an HES code? Both Turkish resident and foreign nationals need an HES code. And then it goes on to state everyone traveling domestically within Turkey, bus, train, plane. As we stated in our examples, that's not always the case. But if you are wanting to get one, which I would suggest if you are wanting to do simple things like go to the mall or travel by bus, it certainly is going to benefit you. Although, as we stated, most sites and most information will tell you that foreign tourists do not need it. It certainly is beneficial to have. So how do I get the HES code? It says to apply for a code, you must have access to a mobile phone registered by a mobile network in Turkey. So what I take away from that is you may or may not be able to use your SIM card that you get once you arrive in Turkey. So the SIM card that you pay for as a tourist versus the registered phone that a Turkish resident or national would have, they're different. So what I would recommend is if you're booking through booking.com, booking through Airbnb or through a hotel, ask the host or the staff at the hotel, let's say, if they would do this for you. Because I'm not sure that the SIM card that you will have as a tourist will qualify for being a mobile phone registered by a mobile network in Turkey. So it says you must send an SMS to the following number 2023 and then follow along. As you see there, you'll put the information HES, space, nationality. So as an American citizen, you would put USA and then space, passport number, space, your year of birth, space, your last name. And then as you can see at the very bottom there is an example. And then you will receive your HES code, or as we stated, you can just go to the mall. They're not going to let you in without it. And the women that we were telling you about, they just took our passport number and grabbed their cell phones and then I don't know, it was really quick actually, 30 seconds to a minute later, they had written down our HES code on a piece of paper and handed it back to us, which we then just kept in our passport the remainder of the time because they wrote it on a sticky note. And yeah, it was really fast. They did that for us. They weren't letting us into that mall without it. And so once they did that, they gave us the Post-it note, as I stated, and then we entered into the mall. So it's very curious how one thing says one thing, another says another, but I would recommend getting it. And this is one way to do it here. One thing we also did want to cover was whether or not you are required to quarantine when you enter into Turkey. So I'm not sure of the date exactly, but after we arrived in Turkey, it may have been in December at some point, they started requiring people entering into Turkey to have a negative PCR test. So you are required to have a negative PCR test, but getting back to quarantine, are tourists required to quarantine? So no if you present a negative PCR test, but if you are able to enter into the country without a PCR test and you are not able to present a negative PCR test, you are required to quarantine, and I believe that was for 14 days. And also another point I wanted to cover before we end the video was whether or not tourists are required to oblige the restrictions on travel the curfews or the weekend lockdown. When we left, there was still a weekend lockdown, restrictions on travel, and a curfew. No, that is not the case. We are not required to follow any of these rules that are put in place. You may or may not opt to go out on the weekend depending on the length of your stay. If you're having a short stay and the only time that you are able to do certain things is on the weekend. For example, in Istanbul, so the sites in Istanbul that are ran by the state are open to tourism. The ones that are ran by the municipality are closed to tourism. So in Istanbul specifically, there are quite a few spots open on the weekend that you can go and see. In our experience, having a long stay and traveled to many cities, we were only in Istanbul for a couple weeks. A lot of the sites outside of Istanbul are closed on the weekend. Some of the larger sites were open, so you may want to just opt to not go out on the weekend because nothing's going to be open anyway. All the locals that run the sites and the shops that you would most likely want to venture out and see, they're not even allowed to be out on the weekend. So a majority of the things you're going to want to visit aren't going to be open. So in our experience, having a long stay of 90 days, we a majority of the time opted to not go out on the weekend. And in fact, it wasn't until maybe like the last 2 weeks that we were in Turkey that we went out on the weekend. And it was because we were very limited on time, and I think one of them was to go to like St. John's Basilica, which is one of the larger sites that is open on the weekend. So other than that, you don't have to oblige by the curfew, the lockdown.
Not everyone that is running the sites is aware, though. For example, we went to a beach, and it was a Saturday or a Sunday, and so we were allowed to be out. However, there was a guy patrolling the beach, and he wouldn't let us stay, and we were trying to explain to him that, you know, we're tourists, we're allowed to be out, we don't have to follow the lockdown rules, and he wasn't having it at all.
So though you may think that you know the rules better than them, it doesn't matter. If they don't know, they're assuming that everyone has to oblige by what the residents and the nationals of Turkey have to oblige by, and at which point forcing you to also oblige by these rules. There's no point in arguing with them. You're not going to win that argument. Just accept the fact that they're not going to allow you in under certain circumstances and go about your business. But that's basically the gist of our video. We wanted to share those points with you, give you a better idea of travel within Turkey, restrictions, requirements, and things of that nature. Thanks for watching our video. We hope that the information we provided helps you in your journey. Stay safe and stay sane out there.